Gospel reading this fifth Sunday of Easter. We have a very brief narrative here, and these were the last words of Jesus before the arrest. And he mentioned about, the last words before the soldiers took him. I give you a new commandment, love one another, and they will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Now this fits into the theme of the True Vine Sunday, this fifth Sunday of Easter. There are only 7 Sundays of Easter, and 7 times 7 in the Hebrew numerology. The 50th day is Pentecost, and that is the sending of the Holy Spirit after the ascension, and that is the public launching of the church, where converts, about 3,000 people, were first converted in that marketplace when Peter opened the windows and the Apostles' Creed, the few words that he mentioned, and converted 3,000 people from different places and languages. So we are progressing to the final days of Sundays of Easter. This is now the very heart of the success of the church, and the rapid growth of the church will depend on these words of Jesus. I give you a new commandment, love one another. They will know you are my disciples. We will look into the impact of these words in the rapid growth of the church. We will see these words in action. And so we will have to go back to the early history of the church and how the church grew. We will go into the factors that contributed to the rapid growth, and then we will look at the meaning and power of these words in the following centuries, especially in the 5th century when history changed. Rome was invaded by barbarians, and a new lifestyle emerged. So by way of, let's organize all this, and by way of outline, first we will go into why did the church grow so rapidly? What were these factors? We will enumerate this. And then second, these words of Jesus, love one another, how was it manifested in the new culture, that was created? And then we'll go into the what happened in the 5th century when Rome the city was almost completely destroyed by terrorists, the ancient barbarians from Scandinavia. And then the Mongols from the east invaded the city, burned the city. And there was a new lifestyle that emerged from this. And what happened now to the lives of the people, these words of Jesus will come back again, that actually saved Europe, and the glorious beginnings of the church in these very difficult times. So, what were the factors that contributed to the rapid growth of the church? Of course, the first is the divine origin of the church, that it was not merely a human creation, that it surpassed and conquered all kinds of trials, the triumph above so many trials and persecutions. But even from the words of one of the Roman officials who said, if this thing is human, it could have disappeared already. But you cannot destroy what is divine. If this thing came from God, this will survive. And history will tell us. And you cannot fight God. So if this thing is from God, you cannot leave these people alone because you cannot win. One of the words of the Roman officials to the armies. Because of the divine origin of the church, no human thing can stop it amidst all persecutions and difficulties. So that's one reason, why the church grew rapidly. Second, the role of the apostles who were formed by Jesus and understood, the mission they were given, and that they know that Jesus was a good leader, and a good leader is that he gave them a compelling vision, a goal. That's the quality of a good leader. Give people a compelling vision, and then get out of the way and let them do their work. Jesus has to ascend to the Father. The work now is on the apostles. And the basis of their success is their absolute love for Jesus, that they were willing to give up their lives for Him. That was the secret, that they loved Jesus. 3 times St. Peter was asked, do you love me? Do you love me? Jesus wanted to hear that, because after, that is the only guarantee that they will succeed, that they love Jesus. And then, of course, the role of the 2 leaders of the early church. Saint Peter, who was local, helped the church to be rooted within Israel. When you plant, many of you are, this is gardening season, spring and summer, and many of you are acquainted with planting flowers and vegetables and trees. The most important thing when you plant is the roots. See to it that the roots are stable and properly grounded. You can trim the plant, you can remove and simplify it, but the roots have to be grounded, strong, to receive nutrients from the soil. That's what St. Peter did to the church. The church was rooted strongly inside Israel. But then that was not enough. It has to be brought out of Israel to the pagans, to the non-Jews. Peter could not do that because he's a local. And he was not prepared to do that. Jesus needed somebody else. Kind of unbelievable how the grace of God can happen here. He needed someone who will bring the church out to the non-Jews. And he used a soldier, a killer, a criminal, persecutor of Christians. Paul, St. Paul, who was knocked down from the horse, who persecuted Christians. Why Paul? Look at the life of Paul. He's the man of the times. He was Greek by blood. He was born in Tarsus, an island in Cilicia, in Aegean Peninsula, part of Greece. He is Jewish by education. He was trained by a scribe called Gamaliel. He is Roman by citizenship. He's a member of the captain of the Roman army, and he had a platinum card. Just testing if you're still listening. He can go anywhere. He can speak the languages, the cultures. And you see how the grace of God, how God can turn everything impossible for this murderer, for this to be converted and to be fully transformed and love Jesus to death, Paul. He brought the faith out. And 3 missionary journeys to Turkey, to Greece, he could face everybody for the love of Jesus and establish churches. Paul, these two people helped the church. And then, in the early beginnings of the church, these words of Jesus, love one another, you can see this as it transformed the entire society from Israel and beyond. Because now it created a new culture. Love one another. This was the thing that impressed the pagans. That attracted them to Christianity. During the time before the church, it was a cruel society. You know how they treat people, especially the sick, how they treat people. It is mentioned there, if you have skin rashes and contagious, they call it leprosy, okay? You are off limits in the city. You are not allowed to enter the gates. You are not allowed to join public gatherings. If you see a man who is sick like that, contagious, you have to stay away 15 feet away from that person. And if that person insists, he should be stoned. Can you imagine how cruel society like that? Especially the marginals, the poor, the sick, they were off limits. They were not allowed. Can you imagine the pain, the cruelty of that kind of society? But when Christianity came and the pagans saw, they said, wow, look how the Christians love one another. They took care of the orphans, the old people who have nothing to eat, the poor, the sick were taken care of. If you look at the history of Europe, it was Christianity that built Europe. It was Christianity that founded hospitals, orphanages, homes for the handicapped old people. It was Christianity that provided all this. It was the Christians who built the arts, the buildings. Look at the arts. They were all those cathedrals. They were structures, art, and music were created by Christianity. Christianity founded schools. The monks founded schools. Even the word school, the origin of that word, that is the name of the sister of Saint Benedict, Saint Scholastica. That's where you get the word school. Because the monks founded the schools, the first university. They founded liberal science and teaching, forming the children. It was Christianity, especially during the 5th century, when the barbarians invaded Europe and destroyed and burned the city of Rome. Life shifted from the city to the countryside. They left the cities. They were all ruined. The culture of civilization were preserved by the monks. The monks who organized the countryside, safe, they are walled settlements where people can live, protected from the terrorists. They copied manuscripts. You know, even wine making. You know, this famous champagne, Dom Perignon, that was invented by a Benedictine monk. Thanks to them, right? Even everything, you know, the monasteries, all of these cultures, Christianity created this. That is why if Europe wants to really be united, it has to go back to Christianity, because it was Christianity that built Europe. You can see that in Ireland when the who is the famous patron of Ireland? St. Patrick. St. Patrick built Ireland. You know, the St. John Bosco built Italy. St. Benedict. These saints, these monks. And in these were all are all based on these words of Jesus. Love one another. They will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Please stand.